Hey everybody, welcome to Mongoose Gaming today. So it's just gonna be me here with Off the Wall Nerds podcast. Justin is out right now at the moment. He is busy, with a work schedule, and also he's been doing some pretty bad weather out in the Midwest. He has had some pretty bad storms out there. He's actually going through a lot of it right now. Granted, he still has some internet. And he's talking to me, but he's got more important things to worry about at the moment. So this will be Off the Wall Nerd. We're gonna go ahead and talk about, as you can see, with Godzilla Kong New Empire, Dune Part 2, and Invincible. Invincible had its Season 2 Part 2 finale just the other day. Of course, Dune Part 2 has been out for a little bit, and then I saw Godzilla Kong opening weekend. So this will be some fun stuff to talk about. We're going to go ahead and start with Invincible. So we did talk about Invincible, I believe, Part 1, Season 2. Season 2 Part 2 was also really good. It left, actually, the cliffhanger was really, really interesting. Because we have been talking about the whole time this theme is Invincible his father's son. It's been the theme of the entire season. Like, are you your dad's son? They're worried that he's going to be, take over for Omni-Man, especially after they attack his dad and his Thraxan wife. They take his dad to be executed and tried, and General Krieg stands there and tells him that he is to resume his father's mission and get Earth ready for Viltrumite rule, which, of course, he says doesn't really say anything because he's lying there unconscious in a way, but he doesn't want to do it. So it was really interesting to see how the season was going to go. Season 2 really opened up with a bang. They had teased some major character deaths, and Part 2 opened up with, I sat there like, what the hell just happened? So we were pretty shocked at that, especially with even Rex going out the way he did. But yeah, it was kind of crazy. And it was a lot of out around there, because Langstrom, Avery, I think is his name. I have to look it up just to be sure, but I mean, he showed up in the final episode like we were hoping he would, but I was really hoping his storyline, there'd be two major storylines, dealing with Omni-Man and dealing with him. But we do see that Omni-Man is, of course, in the Viltrumite prison, and Mark trying to balance being a superhero and dating and all that with Amber. So yeah, but we do see our favorite Unopan, Alan, come in, Seth Rogen, and he got juiced. It was pretty fun to see that. He comes in looking for Mark, takes on the Immortal, and basically holds his own until Mark gets up there and separates them. And now all of a sudden you're like, okay. So of course he's trying to recruit Mark to help them out because Alan is part of this coalition to basically stop the Viltrumites, which is the ruling council. Head of it is a Viltrumite himself, who managed to, I guess, flee and escape that sort of rule. And voiced by none other than Peter Cullen. The second he spoke, I'm like, Leia and I, and even Jonathan was like, we know who that is. So it was really cool to hear him in there. So going through the entire process of this, like I said, Part 2 of the season was just a lot of it being, of course, about Mark, and then his little brother, which has now been named Oliver, being a toddler. It's hinted at that he will be aging much faster than humans, but much slower than Thraxans because he's half Viltrumite, half Thraxan. So he'll it'll be probably one of those where he's like 20 years old, but he's really 10 or something like that, or however they're going to age him. But again, Mark trying to handle that. And finally we get Angstrom, however that's going to go. Finally show up in the season 2 finale. And he is as sadistic as we were hoping and thought he would be. But, of course, Mark's sitting there trying to basically say that Mark, was there to help him at the very beginning because Mark showed up, kind of ruined it without listening to him, that he was actually Langstrom was really trying to end all of his, other dimensional counterparts for a vision of peace. So he had the right idea, but, of course, that didn't get through to Mark, so, of course, Mark kind of ruined it. In quote-unquote save the day, didn't save the day. So, of course, he shows up and... yeah, absolutely just chilling, ready to kill a baby type stuff. And it's like, while I kind of root for sometimes kids to be killed in Jurassic Park or something like that, like studio taking chances to kill the kids, this is pretty messed up because it was a baby. It's like there's a line you draw at some point. But the big storyline here was Mark killed him. They fight after Mark goes through dimension after dimension. A couple of very, very fun cameos from their version of Spider-Man. He had a big old A on his chest. I wouldn't be surprised if that name is Arachnid or Arachnaman or something like that. And then, of course, you see Mark in a dimension sitting there dissing a guy dressed as a bat. and that was like just absolutely hysterical for like that 10 seconds. So when Mark is finally able to get back to Langstrom and they fight, Mark beats him to death, quite literally. And Mark's whole thing is he doesn't want to kill. And so Langstrom kept putting that in his head that he's a killer in all these other dimensions, and that when he's not a killer, he's some evil dictator ruler. So it's like he just has total animosity towards Invincible because of that. So it was really interesting to see how that was going to go. And yeah, it was, like I said, he severely hurts Mark's mom. And of course, it's just, again, chilling. But I really like the season 2 finale. It ended really well. As everybody was hoping there was more. There was just a quick 8 episodes for season 2. So it's kind of like hoping for 10. But it was a lot of fun. It was very fast paced this time around. Granted, 45 to 55 minute episodes, so pretty good for the animation. Still top notch. And of course, the episode ends with Alan the Unobin coming across the Viltrumite prison ship and getting caught on purpose. You see him take on, I forget her name, the woman who took on Mark, but takes a punch from her, and Alan's totally fine. He beats he can beat the shit out of her, but he doesn't. He just plays dead to get on the ship, and then hits up Omni-Man and is like, hey, I'm here for you. And then Omni-Man ends the season with, I think I miss my wife. And then it cuts. Like, wow. So, of course, which wife? But we're pretty sure he's talking about his, of course, Mark's mom. But that's how season 2 ended. So we're definitely going to obviously wait for season 3. I'm assuming it's been greenlit. I actually should have checked that prior to this, but that's okay. So we're definitely looking at that coming up in season 3, you know, what is going to happen. I really kind of hope Mark gets some sort of power boost, because it's dangerously clear he cannot take on any Viltrumite. He barely started against his dad, because I guarantee you his dad was holding back. And of course, the lieutenant or whatever she was, when she came down and fought Mark, he stood no shot. So we definitely want to see how that's going to go. Again, looking forward to season 2. It's going to be season 3. But a lot of that is also with Mark dealing with Amber. Basically, how they broke up, because he's a superhero, he can't handle it. Let's see. Oh yeah. So they show me this. Oh yeah. So Amazon picked up Invincible. So there will be a season 3. This is announced back in April 21. I still think it's 2020. So go figure. So there is going to be a season 3. Beyond that, we don't know for sure. So season 3 might wrap something up. However, Kirkman and Corey Walker have wanted to flesh out a lot of storylines. They said there's so much they can do with the Invincible show because of all the comics behind it, and they're literally translating the drawings from the comics to animation. And not that that's easy, but it's something they want to do, so they can easily adapt so many seasons. I remember correctly, Kirkman was saying something about adapting like 7 or 8 seasons worth of content, which would be really great, because again, once Mark gets fleshed out and we see what happens with his dad and what Alan and them can do, this anti-Viltrumite rebellion, if the Viltrumites do get their asses handed to them, what happens next? Because there's always going to be some next level threat. So definitely look into it. Give J.K. Simmons all the roles. He can do no wrong. I'm sorry. Just him as Omni-Man is great. Now, there wasn't a lot of Omni-Man this season, just because he was, brought in the season part 2 premiere, and then here and there, they, of course, the Viltrumites got him back up to speed, because it's their code of honor to make sure a Viltrumite is 100% before they face execution. So Mark, oh my god, Nolan had to basically get better. So that's definitely something we're looking forward to. I know we want to hear Justin's thoughts on this, or even Ross, but we all have some pretty busy lives. I managed to get this squeezed out, just kind of do it myself. But hopefully on the next show, like I said, before I move on to the next couple topics, we will want to talk about Star Trek going forward, Star Trek Discovery, Strange New World Season 3. We have Prodigy Season 2 having premiered in France, so there's going to be a lot of that going on. A lot of Star Trek talk and a lot of Star Wars talk, with Tales of the Empire and Vader getting a in-canon apprentice. Vader's only ever had an apprentice in the video games or novels outside of canon, so that'll be interesting. But I digress. So that's gonna be it for my take on Invincible. I'm really looking forward to season 3. Being Amazon Prime still has not said anything beyond that, though. Is that just season 3? They might Lost in Space it, not cancel it, but just do like a 3-season arc, and that's all we're gonna have, or do a season 3 and have a spin-off like they did with Adam Eve. But again, something we'll see how it goes. But the next part I want to talk about is Dune Part 2. This is definitely be more Leia's wheelhouse, because she of course has read the book. So that was actually interesting to get a view of it. I don't read, I don't read novels, but I read stuff. But Leia, having read the Dune book and then listen to the audiobook prior to seeing Dune Part 1 and 2, if someone like her was really sucked into the movies Part 1 and 2 the way she was, then you know Denis Villeneuve did something right. You know that Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Josh Brolin, Skarsgård, and all of them did something right with the roles they were given, the characters they were given. And I'll say this right now, you might hear the giggle, but Leia's favorite portrayal, because it's 100% spot on according to her, is Javier Bardem as Stilgar. So, but with Dune Part 2 opens up right where basically Dune Part 1 left off. In the novel, there's a considerable time jump. And this, again, it's one novel. The novel is not 2 parts. But from how the Part 1 ends in that chapter, there's a considerable time jump in the next part in the book, where Paul and Chani have a child, I believe, and his little sister's name is Alia. His little sister's name is Alia, and she's born and a few years old. But from what Leia told me, and what even the movie hints at, even though she's not born in Part 2, is that Alia has full adult cognitive abilities and speech at the age of basically in the womb, and even at like 3 or 4 years old, she has the memories of the Reverend Mothers before her. That whole thing that just with the Bene Gesserit, I thought that was probably one of the weirder things in the movie. But in the movie, throughout the movie, she is communicating with Paul. She's talking, of course, with Jessica throughout the movie, but then, of course, she has that quick little scene, Anya Taylor-Joy portraying Alia for that about 5 seconds. She's talking to Paul. But at the beginning of the movie, they're still avoiding the Harkonnens. And one of the funnier parts of the beginning, I hate to say it like this, but because she's pregnant, of course, Jessica throws up. But if you pay attention to how the Fremen are, they do not waste water, moisture, and nothing of any kind. So Jessica goes to throw up, and you hear Stilgar, hold it in, don't do it, and she throws up. You can tell he's just cussing her out in their language. That's just absolutely funny. Again, because Javier Bardem as Stilgar is just absolutely on point. So what they're doing with Part 1 and 2 is that, again, as we're saying, they're avoiding the Harkonnens. Paul and Chani are together, but they don't have a child. So Villeneuve said that this was kind of a process where they wanted to just speed it up for the sake of the story, kind of like how Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, all them, they don't take those thousands of years in between. They just condense it for better storytelling, because this way, if you come into this movie having not read the book, then you're going to sit there and be like, Paul and Chani have a 5-year-old kid, and all of a sudden Paul has a 5-year-old sister. Like, when did this happen? So they do it for the sake of the story, and not a bad creative choice. It worked out. But of course, Paul is on this journey where he is the Fremen, he is the Messiah of the Fremen, and of course, this entire time, up until about the end of the 3rd act, like halfway through the 3rd act, Paul keeps saying he does not want it. He sits there like an actual, at the time, seems like a good person, and is like, no, I don't want this. I don't want to be the Messiah. I don't want to do this. He just wants revenge for the death of his father at the hands of the Harkonnens. And of course, the one and only Christopher Walken as Emperor Shaddam. So that was pretty good seeing Christopher Walken. Now, Christopher Walken had some decent screen time as Emperor Shaddam. It was more Florence Pugh doing the show. And of course, oh my god, I forgot the actress's name who played one of the Bene Gesserit sisters. Who of course made her move with Fade to continue whatever it is the Bene Gesserit do, just real fucked up type shit. Oh, preserving the bloodlines in their way. But the movie is really, really good. As far as sequels go, Dune Part 2 is definitely up there as one of the best sequels ever. It's the type of improvement you see in a sequel, like from Batman Begins to Dark Knight. Dune Part 2 is that to Dune Part 1. Like, it's just absolutely asininely that much of an improvement. That goes a lot to the director, the writing, and the cast. Of course, you have some Star Wars nerds going, "This is the Empire Strikes Back of Dune," and I'm just like, "Oh, honey, if you only knew." But as they're progressing through the story, Jessica then becomes the Reverend Mother of the Fremen. She goes through her whole ritual of drinking the water of life, which is sandworm piss. We're just call it what it is. It's sandworm piss, but it's blue, and it's probably blue Kool-Aid in behind the scenes. But in the movie, they're drinking worm pee. But we see that kind of process shell out that how small these sandworms really are, about half the size of a person, to becoming 4 kilometers long. So I do like the part near the beginning where Paul is basically finishing his Fremen training. At this point, he has his name, Paul Usul Atreides, which Usul, I believe, was the little... No, that's Muad'Dib. Okay, Usul was his Fremen name. Muad'Dib was the little rat big ear thing. Desert mouse? Desert mouse. Okay, Leia's telling me desert mouse. So, as Paul's getting ready to ride the sandworm, of course, Paul doesn't know, but all he does, Paul calls the sandworm. Cool. He's doing what Stilgars teach him to do. Another great part was just that he calls the sandworm, and Paul's sitting like, "Cool, I've got a sandworm. You should cut to Stilgar," and Stilgar is basically saying, "Holy shit, not that big." Apparently, per the source material and in the movie, Paul called the largest sandworm you could call, grandfather sandworm is basically what it's called. Yes. But of course, Paul doesn't know that, but all the Fremen do, and you see them freaking out, but Paul's not paying attention to them. He just needs to write it to prove his worth. And that scene I learned from Denis Villeneuve, was actually done practically. That is Timothy Chalamet on a flippin' sand dune running. Obviously, the only CGI and all that is the worm, but even then, they actually took trucks and drove them through the dune in that fashion. So Chalamet is, of course, hooked up, but that's all done practically. I was really, really impressed with that when Denis Villeneuve pointed that out. So, props to Chalamet. And again, just the movie is progressing very, very nicely. I wouldn't say as fast as part 1, but definitely a better pace to part 2. Gurney comes back. He was smiling, don't worry. But Gurney comes back, of course. Then, they're getting the Fremen ready, and Paul's still leading this, not revolution, but this revenge thing. And behind the scenes, we finally get our first look at Austin Butler as Fade Routha. And personally, for me, the best casting of the 2 movies so far was Austin Butler as Fade Routha. Leia had been beyond hyped to see how they were going to do this with Fade, because Sting portrayed Fade in the first one in David Lynch's Dune. Rip to that movie. But then there was also a mini-series, which I did not know until I saw Dune Part 1 when Leia told me, but there was also a Fade Routha in that one as well. Again, never saw it, but if Leia wasn't hyped about it, Ross wasn't hyped about it, then, it's just a poor portrayal of Fade. So the first time we see Fade, at least physically in the trailers, Leia was like, okay, he's got the appearance right. He looks like a Harkonnen. And then when we see Fade in that gladiator arena for his birthday, he just absolutely is unhinged. That's what he should be. Completely unhinged, completely insane. He was given a bit of I don't want to say softer side, but an honorable side, because Leia told me he's not honorable in the books. He just kills. He doesn't give a shit. But he has an honorable side to him, as he fights the last of these 3 warriors. He wasn't drugged, so Fade is fighting this guy unprotected. He turns off his weirding. Is it weirding? His shield? Just a shield? His personal shield. He turns it off, and of course, the guards and all that freak out, and he's all tells him to stay back. So he's fighting this Atreides soldier, 1-on-1, no shield, just blade on blade. And credit to the Atreides soldier, he goes toe to toe with Fade. For those of you who read the book, Fade knows how to fight, and this Atreides soldier goes toe to toe and is standing with him. But of course, Fade comes out on top. And then Fade, then in that match, essentially, even though it's for his birthday, he becomes the Duke of Arrakis and making Raban his bitch. Again, credit to Dave Bautista for fantastically, according to Leia, portraying Raban. But Fade beats the shit out of him when Raban comes in to try to tell him something, and he just puts Fade puts Raban on the ground and just basically literally makes him kiss his boob. But that makes it where he's like, okay, I'm not going to kill you now. So Fade, of course, behind the scenes, again, this is where a lot of it is giving credit to the viewer that they have read the book, because Fade gets spice production and all this stuff back on track for the Harkonnens. Like, Fade brings Arrakis to the right way, if you will. Again, spice production's back on track. They're meeting quotas and all that. But again, that's just something you don't see. That's just assuming, like, they're trying to treat the viewer like, hey, Fade comes in and fixes stuff. That's basically what happened. But then, of course, Fade being Fade, orders the complete destruction of the Fremen holy area. I forgot what it was called, but part of the Siege. Siege Tabor. That's right. And destroys it. Like, you see the ship come in out of nowhere and absolutely fires what I would probably count as 1,000 missiles and completely destroys it. One of the big things about this Siege Tabor being destroyed like that is that is all of their water that they have ever saved, is my understanding. Like, it is their holy site, and it again is like all the water from their history. It's one site, but it's the Tabor site that is all the water they've ever collected from their fallen comrades, from their suits, stuff like that. So that's water they don't touch. Obviously, they don't drink it, but that's their sacred water, which is of course lost because Fade had it destroyed. And behind the scenes, after Fade does his thing, he gets with a Bene Gesserit who does the same thing to Paul what the Reverend Mother did to Paul. This girl does to Fade Rotha. Put your hand in the box. But we don't see that whole sequence. She just tells him that. It ends. She comes back and basically is like, yeah, I banged Fade. I'm pregnant now. So yeah, that was pretty crazy. Because Fade basically got laid. I did not mean for that to rhyme. Don't shoot me for that one. So that happened though, of course, to preserve the bloodline, and because she's Bene Gesserit, obviously chooses the sex of the baby, and it's a girl. Okay. So Florence Pugh as Princess Irulan is actually narrating the movie in a way Leia liked, because that's how it is actually done in the book. The book is basically being narrated by her, so when she's writing at the very beginning of the movie, after we see Emperor Shaddam, it's like, the beginning of the next chapter. And when she does it again, that's literally the next chapter. So if we're to assume what we're going off of, we went through 2 chapters in part 2. Or 2 sections of the book, if you will. Like, 5 chapters here, 5 chapters there. I don't know how many chapters are in Dune, but a lot of chapters according to Leia. So, Florence Pugh did pretty good as Princess Irulan. Again, just not as much screen time as she probably should have gotten. Definitely not as much as Emperor Shaddam should have gotten either. But again, Christopher Walken did pretty well for what he was given. Definitely there was no cowbell. Don't worry, there was no cowbell in this. But he does say a line that I made Leia laugh when he said we need more. And I said cowbell, and Leia about beat the shit out of me. So, but we get to the final point where then Paul is forced to take on the role of the Messiah against Chani's wishes, against basically half the Fremen, because they have to go to the southern side of the planet to convince the rest of them to join. And that's what Stilgar and them do. And of course, he goes into this holy area and uses the voice, bashes one of the people standing up to him. Stilgar then says, take my blade and kill me in the place of this. So Paul finally goes and drinks the water of life, has his visions, and then all hell just breaks loose. Like, holy shit. We get a whole bunch of information from when Jessica drank the water to when Paul drank it. Paul and Jessica are Harkonnens. Baron Harkonnen is Jessica's father. The Reverend Mother, what was her name, Leia? Gaius Mohaim, the really old lady. She was one who basically, she's mom. It's understood that she's Jessica's mother, and if Harkonnen is her father, then obviously, she did that to Baron Harkonnen at way back when to again preserve the bloodline, have a girl. That's what happened. But we all know Jessica had a boy, and that pissed off the Bene Gesserit. You'll see that in part 1. But So Paul and Jessica find this out. So she's the daughter of Harkonnen. Paul, that means, is the grandson. And when Paul finally calls in this war, his soldiers to come fight, um, you get an awesome shot of of 3 sandworms just rolling in. Kudos to the Sardaukar for standing their ground, even though they got a giant ass sandworm coming at them. But again, the sandworms aren't necessarily going to come kill them. They're transporting troops, and of course the big old fight. And then Paul gets up to the Emperor's ship, and right before he kills Baron Harkonnen, he goes, "Hello, grandfather," and then just kills him, which I'm totally cool with because that's what he gets. And for me, what ensues next is Florence Pugh, Princess Irulan, immediately jumps in front of him, or well, at least jumps up, and says, "If you marry me, this will make your ascension to the throne legitimate if you spare my father." Paul doesn't immediately go for that because he's like, "No, I'm going to fight him," and of course, he's old. He's not going to fight, so he has to choose a champion. And who else? Who of all people who stands up? Fade. And we get one of the most epic fight scenes of this century we're ever going to get. As Paul does his "May thy knife chip and shatter," Fade mocks him, but does it in an honorable way. Again, Fade is more honorable in the movie than he is in the book. But we get an outstanding fight sequence that is literally just Austin Butler, Timothée Chalamet fighting with very little sound editing and no score. That's what made the fight so epic, because everybody who's read the books and is at least a big fan of the series knows that the stakes of this fight are asininely high. If Fade wins, that's it for Atreides. Like, Jessica's dead at that point because they'll kill her. Gurney Halleck will put up a fight. You know he's gonna die though. It's just that, yeah. If Paul lost that fight, Harkonnens rule everything, and and Fade would actually probably most likely become Emperor at that point, because then Shaddam will be like, "I love you, this and that, like, thank you for saving my life," but Fade might have just killed him too. Who knows? Again, Fade is crazy. But the fight, again, was absolutely beautifully choreographed, was beautifully well done. The lighting, the set, and everything was absolutely perfect. Leia was zoned in on it. Leia's very rarely zoned in on a movie. This is one of those scenes of the movie she was completely zoned in on. And so to get someone like that who's a fan of the book series, much how she loves Lord of the Rings, this is one of her favorite series, she gave the movie an A. Like, they did their homework. They knew what they were doing when they changed stuff. So the fight, of course, ends with Paul winning. He kills Fade. Does the whole little, if you will, switcheroo. He stabbed me, but I took the other blade, stabbed him. So it was kind of predictable once Fade stabbed him. But again, the choreography was amazing in this fight scene. And I gush about it because I love a good fight scene, like with John Wick. I'll even go as far back as The Matrix. Like, these fight scenes are really, really what make a movie sometimes of this kind of caliber. So the movie ends abruptly. That's the way the book ends. So for those of you wondering, like, how does this end like this? That's the way the book ends. But Paul, of course, tells Chani beforehand that he will always love her as long as he breathes. And then that's when, of course, though, at the same time, he takes Irulan's hand in marriage to ascend to the Golden Lion throne. At this time, all of the other houses are in orbit and send a message that Gurney tells them that they will not recognize his claim to the throne. And for the fans of the books, they know what this means. That means a holy war of epic proportions is coming, because you see Stilgar and the men and all the Fremen jump on ships. And without going in too much into Dune Messiah, basically as they jump on the ships, they're going to annihilate or fight everybody they have to, because Paul at this point is the supreme ruler of the known universe. And the movie ends with Chani taking off. In the book, she stays with Paul because Paul only takes Irulan's hand to get the throne, and he loves Chani, and that's his woman. That's it. But this one shows Chani taking off. So we'll see what kind of creative differences they're going to throw in. It's going to be read Dune Part 3, or it may just read Dune Messiah. So it'll be a part 3, but it's really, again, 2 books. Because Dune Part 1 and 2 are just half of the book. Again, really well done. Villeneuve did his homework. The acting was great. So, and one of my favorite castings. So my favorite cast in this movie again was Austin Butler's Fade. And having not even read the source material, just seeing Austin Butler go from playing Elvis and what I saw of him doing that to then in what he did in the Shannara Chronicles, trust me, go watch it. It's a trip. But to see him from the Shannara Chronicles, a few years later he's in Elvis, and then now doing Fade Ralpha. You want to talk about a 180 on a 180 on a 180, which is, I'm sorry, not a 540. I mean, he just keeps flipping the script. So Austin Butler, kudos. Again, as far as other castings go, Josh Brolin as Gurney was great. Stilgar remains Leia's favorite casting. I do believe Brolin is her second favorite because just the way Gurney is portrayed in the books, Brolin kind of nails that. And one of my favorites was, of course, Jason Momoa's Duncan Idaho. But spoiler, Duncan comes back in Messiah, but that's all I'll say. If they go the way I think they're gonna go, just bear with it, okay? But of course, Rebecca Ferguson did great as Jessica. Skarsgård as Harkonnen was amazing, and of course, Dave Bautista bringing his acting chops. This was a movie that they did their homework, they did what they were supposed to, so it's definitely one of those you have to see. It's getting close to becoming out of theaters just because it's been in theaters for about a month, so about 3 more weeks. Usually a movie stays in about 6 to 8 weeks, so we'll see how much longer it's going to stay there. But that's my recap of Dune. Again, from a sci-fi standpoint, a sci-fi fiction aficionado like myself, I give it a 9 out of 10. It was a solid movie, and again, I stand by the comparisons that I agree with the comparisons, that I've seen, that it's an improvement of like Dark Knight was the Batman Begins, Empire Strikes Back was the New Hope. So Dune Part 2 is that good of a movie. Now, this of course will beg it, like, if they get Messiah off the ground, which officially has been greenlit by Legendary as of Thursday. Villeneuve has the screenplay. He never said how far he was on the screenplay, but he is writing the screenplay for Messiah even after finishing Dune Part 2. However, he is taking a break to do a couple other projects, I believe. So Messiah probably shouldn't be expected, literally no joke, until probably 27 at the earliest, maybe 2026. Because while Messiah is a shorter book, there's, directors like that are going to throw stuff in like, oh, okay, we missed this in part 1 and 2. Let's throw this in part 3. So definitely expect another 2.5 hour movie. My prediction is late 26, early 27, we'll see it. And, hoping Jason Momoa returns as Duncan Idaho. Anyway. So, again, that's recap on Dune. If you haven't seen it, go see it. When it does come out on streaming, it will be on HBO. Legendary Warner Brothers owns HBO or vice versa, so it will come on HBO Max at some point. Probably, I don't know, maybe June at the earliest. Of course, it gets the digital release first. But moving on to one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't give a shit. Like, this movie has been panned by critics. You see it at the top of my screen right here. Godzilla Kong New Empire. My favorite movies are Jurassic Park, Avengers Endgame, Transformers, Dark of the Moon, and Godzilla Kong New Empire. So it pretty much tells you where my maturity stands in movies. That being said, I love good movies, like Forrest Gump or Godfather Part 2, something Scorsese does, or something by Francis Ford Coppola, really good dramas, really good storylines, stuff like that. But when it comes to mindless, actiony fun that the producers and the director listen to the fans, this is that fucking movie. Godzilla Kong, I give it 9 out of 10 Dougs. Go look that up. But this is definitely Kong's story. There's a lot of Kong. I will say this, Godzilla was underutilized, but Godzilla is portrayed as being, it should be portrayed as being smarter. Godzilla is not an idiot. A lot of these Titans are portrayed as mindless beasts. They're not mindless beasts if you pay attention to how they act. Because one of the goals for the directors and the writers was that the Titans have emotions. They have thought processes. They communicate with each other. That was shown very much in King of the Monsters, where Godzilla and Ghidorah do their alpha cries, and of course the other Titans bow. Like, you don't see that in the Animal Kingdom, where this isn't Lion King in the real world where these animals bow to the king. But in the movie, that's their communication. So Godzilla does that, and of course he is King of the Monsters. In Godzilla Kong, I will say this, Godzilla has a plan from the get-go. Godzilla knew what was coming, and that's why you see Godzilla going nuts with turning his blue electromagnetic radioactive self. He's not attacking humans, of course. Unfortunately, humans are the casualty, but you see him fighting Scylla and taking Scylla out. And then the most adorable thing ever a Titan can do: curl up in a ball in the Coliseum and falling asleep like a goddamn cat. I fits, I sleeps. That's what happened. Yeah, Leia was laughing too hard at that. But Godzilla knows what's coming. Like, I'll focus on Godzilla right now. So Godzilla basically gets juiced, goes to France, finds a nuclear power plant, absorbs all of that radiation, and it's a good thing. Humans, this is actually a fun thing. The humans learn. Instead of throwing fighter jets at him, they're just throwing drones. So he's not killing anybody. But yeah, Leia didn't know that they were drones attacking Godzilla. So of course he takes them out. But then does his EMP pulse, and then he goes back into the water. And I believe it said he was heading for Spain, or was leaving Spain, because he goes and finds Tiamat. Now, Tiamat, I will admit, was very underused, but again, this is stuff that was also in the graphic novels that were between after King of the Monsters and after Godzilla vs. Kong. This stuff was in the graphic novels. The two Titans we see Godzilla fight, Scylla and Tiamat, were two of the Titans that did not bow and kept causing trouble for Godzilla. So basically, he got fed up with their shit. So Godzilla goes and fights Tiamat, and you see this is how Godzilla gets his pink hueish power and evolves. He kills Tiamat, absorbs her energy, goes and cocoons basically for good about a quarter of the movie, and evolves and gets absolutely juiced and jacked more than he did in King of the Monsters. Now, people say he got weaker. I 100% know he got stronger. The way he just comes out, his build, his speed, his strength, it's all there. He's now got a Thagomizer on his tail that was missed. You see his tail looks like a goddamn Stegosaurus tail. So it's a good thing he didn't actually whack anybody with that thing, because he would have stabbed him. But as we're focusing, again, this being Kong's story, Kong's chilling in Hollow Earth. Has a great moment with Doug. Kong is being chased by this pack of giant creature-like wolf things. But Kong goes, they trip his trap. He goes, kills a couple of them. He's eating one, and of course, Doug comes up and steals his dinner, and Kong just sits there like, motherfucker. Like, he just lets Doug have it. And you see Doug looking at him like, okay, and then runs away. We got Doug. We're good. But Kong is still looking for his family. That was the theme in Skull Island to Godzilla vs. Kong to now. So Kong got his trilogy. And the portrayal of Kong in this is doing really, really well with a visual storytelling, letting the Titans tell their story. If you pay attention, we're getting the story. We don't need the human exposition, and the human character is a lot better this time around. Very, very little compared to the other movies. So I really appreciated that. So, but Dr. Andrews is still really good. Gia is really good. I believe Hoddle is her last name. Katie Hoddle, I forgot her first name, but Hoddle, the actress playing Gia, fantastic. She was a little bit underutilized too, I will say, but her role is still very much a large one in the overall scheme of things. But one of Kong's traps, as those creatures fall in, but just kind of set something off, because when they see, actually, I think it was Scar, and it wasn't Scar, it was one of the Scar's hench apes, I can't say henchmen. So one of his hench apes goes and attacks the, Titan station, and they of course see a video of that. They see the red handprint on the wall, which we have seen before, and Andrews knows that something is up. And may whatever Titan god there is bless the universe for Trapper. Good God, Trapper was fucking hilarious. Trapper basically being a Titan veterinarian. I don't even know what his title was appropriately, but he's basically a veterinarian for Titans, because he goes and gives Kong a new tooth. But again, Kong's trap basically sends a message that there's something opened up, so then those apes go and smash the station. Kong goes down there and finds these apes. Oh, okay, sorry. Let me go to the funniest part of the goddamn movie. He finds Zuko, puts his hand out, puts the axe down, puts his hand on Kong's like, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. That's what Kong is saying. Zuko walks up to him, bites the shit out of his hand, like a fucking puppy would. And then to top this scene off, Kong gets jumped because Zuko is basically bait. Gets jumped by these other three great apes, 3 or 4 of them. And then Kong does the funniest thing we've seen of someone being thrown around, and Kong takes Zuko and just starts throwing him around like a goddamn ragdoll at these other apes. And you kind of have to give credit where credit is due. That was flippin' brilliant. That just was shades of Hulk throwing Loki around, where you're just waiting for Kong to throw Zuko into the ground and just going and doing an ape grunt, his version of puny god. So that was really great. Of course, Kong goes and Zuko basically is then like, okay, I'm gonna help you. So he ends up taking him down to this new part of Hollow Earth, and we get Scar's introduction of how sadistic Scar really is. So you see Kong help this ape up, and Scar goes and jumps down and like does his alpha roar, but then does a very much Koba type thing. If you see Planet of the Apes, Scar very much is Koba in this instance, because you see Koba kind of joke around with the humans and then shoots them. Well, Scar kind of does that. He kind of like just laughs, chuckles, gets the other apes laughing and chuckling, and then takes Zuko's guardian or dad or whatever and kicks him into lava. Like, just totally just killed him. And that's when Kong was like, oh, hell no. And so Kong grabs his axe, he grabs his spine whip or whatever, they start fighting. And Kong, I'm sorry, even though Scar cut him up a little bit with this spine whip, Kong's gonna beat the shit out of him. Like, Kong's going to win. Scar is only ruling out of fear. He doesn't have he doesn't have power. But we see his power come when the end of his tail, his spine whip, is actually a piece that controls Shimo. Is Shimo, female Titan. Get it right, people. But controls Shimo, and you see the apes put this big ass boulder to move the lava, and very much is a control that is iffy. But Scar controls Shimo and calls her out, and I will say this is one of the best reveals of a Titan we've had in the MonsterVerse. Next to the first time we see Godzilla at the airport in Godzilla, next to Ghidorah popping out in King of the Monsters. Like, this is absolutely, it is terrifying. So Kong, of course, gets the axe, tries to block Shimo's ice blast, gets fucked up in the process, and gets out. But Zuko gets him out of there. And of course, they get a gauntlet on him. Kong's arm's messed up, so Trapper goes and finds this gauntlet that they've had and gives it to Kong and just absolutely badasses him even more. And of course, Gia tells Kong, we need more help. So while she tells him that, in this whole process between her telling Kong we need help, he knows, we all knew where he was going. We're not stupid. Us, the audience, were not stupid. We knew where he was going. But then Gia finds more Iwi. They are further in their own little section, if you will, of their Hollow Earth. She finds not her tribe, but a tribe. And she is, I'll say it, she's basically like the Messiah in a way. But she is viewed as one of the ones that has this special connection with the Hollow Earth. And of all Titans that make a return, we hear the famous cry. And it's Leia's favorite Titan, Mothra. Gia was the linchpin to bring back Mothra, or at least release her, because they're protected by a special biological veil, which of course gets broken into by Scar, because they know that Kong basically escaping showed Scar a portal, so now Scar knows they can escape. They're no longer subjugated by their servitude, because Scar is actually down there because of Godzilla. As Dr. Andrews is doing her exposition, we find out that Scar lost the fight with Godzilla and is down there because of him, and is basically, that's their prison. So of course they escape. But then we get one of the funnier sequences of the film. We see Kong go up to the surface, and you see him kind of stand there, and he's like, okay. He throws his fist in the air and does his alpha call. And you see Godzilla immediately going, bro, what the fuck? Because that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing we understood. That Godzilla said, no, you stay under there, I stay up here. That's the agreement. So as Kong calls Godzilla, we see Godzilla, and I will say this is one of the more crazy shots I've seen in a MonsterVerse movie. Godzilla jumping off this cliff into the ocean was nuts. Like, yeah, we've seen Godzilla run. We've seen Kong jump and run. But Godzilla jumping off this cliff into the ocean, like, holy shit. And gracefully, yes. That Leia was in diving. I've done swimming. I gave it a 6 out of 10. It was a solid dive. There was just too much splash. But of course him roaring, then of course they start duking it out. And Kong basically throwing his hands up like, don't hit me, help me, and Godzilla tackles him into one of the pyramids. That's pyramid number 1 destroyed. Then of course he gets away from him, and Kong is running around, and Godzilla uses atomic breath and then destroys the other pyramid. So Kong finally is about had it, and he starts beating the shit out of Godzilla. But you think it's like a knockout blow. So then the funny shit, Kong grabs Godzilla by the tail and starts dragging him. Like, you were coming with me one way or the other. It starts dragging him to the portal. But Godzilla isn't fully knocked out, turns around, and then is about to blast his ass with the atomic breath. And then Mothra shows up. And I will say this, Mothra shows up as mom. Shows up and is like, boys, knock your shit off. You're here to help each other. And she shows up with Gia. And so Gia sits there, and it's not Kong that goes to greet her, it is Godzilla, because Mothra and Godzilla have the symbiotic relationship. He is king of the monsters, she has always been queen of the monsters. And so because of Mothra, Godzilla greets Gia, and then you see them understand each other, what they have to do. And right as Scar and Shimo come into the Iwi area, as they're trying to collapse that place with their pyramids collapsing on top of each other, we get one of the all-time greatest just action sequences ever. You see, it was in the trailer. I will say this, yes, the trailer revealed it, but Godzilla and Kong come down. You see Godzilla and Kong jump out of what they landed in and just absolutely booking it towards them. Kong jumps on Godzilla, Scar's riding Shimo, and then they just jump at each other. I'm sorry, I was a fucking kid, man. I was like, I saw that shit like hell yeah. And they do the slow-mo Scar, slow-mo on Kong, slow-mo on Shimo, slow-mo on Godzilla, and they just go asinine ham on each other. But while Shimo tried to stop the pyramids from touching with her ice breath, the pyramids end up touching and causing a gravitational flux. So you see them just lose their footing, but you see Godzilla jumping off of shit. You see Zuko throwing rocks and nailing other apes. You see them just all kind of trying to fight each other until eventually they find a portal. Scar finds a portal, and him, Shimo, Kong, and Godzilla all end up going to the surface. And one of the biggest, absolute craziest monster brawls happen. Actually, I need to back up a little bit. You know, Wingard is a wrestling fan because Godzilla DDT'd the shit out of Kong when they're in when they're in Giza. I'm sorry, Cairo, whatever, pyramids of Giza and Cairo, however that works. Godzilla Godzilla DDT'd Kong. It was an absolute what the fuck moment. If you're a WWE fan, you were shitting rainbows of happiness with seeing that, because it was absolutely asinine crazy to see Godzilla do that. Next thing you know, McMahon is gonna call and be like, "Hey, let me borrow Godzilla." Oh, I'm sorry, Triple H. But yeah. So then, but sorry, I backed up because as the fight ensues, in Rio, Kong goes and does a wrestling move on Scar, and it was hilarious. So it's like this fight was just literally just it was great. I'm sorry, I have to gush about this fight. Scar, you can tell Scar is terrifying, and that he has the power to control the strongest and first Titan ever created. But, and you know Scar is sadistic, like just what he did. You just know Scar has no control. But, in a one-on-one fight, Kong will whoop his ass. Like we saw the beginning, we saw it in this fight. But Scar is resourceful. That's what he has going for him. But again, they get into the wrestling match. We see Godzilla and Shimo tackling each other. I mean, those two Titans going at it, and Shimo is massive. What you guys have to understand is that Godzilla, Kong, and Scar all about 100 to 120 meters tall. Shimo at the shoulder is about 150 meters. If she were to stand on her hind legs, it was reported she's 400 meters tall on her hind legs. Shimo is massive. But Godzilla gives no fucks. Neither does Kong. But we noted that the fight isn't with Shimo, because then Zuko helps join the fight, and they notice that the Scar's spinal necklace thing has a crystal that's controlling Shimo. So Suko actually ends up bringing Kong's axe up to him. The first thing he does is he actually smashes that little crystal, and you see Shimo shake it off, and is like, has that, you can tell by just the facial expression. I love that he gave the monsters facial expressions, but that Shimo shook it off was like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, she is not an evil titan. She is not a titan that wants to cause destruction, even though she is responsible for the Ice Age. That's confirmed in the Monsterverse. And she's also confirmed to be the titan that froze King Ghidorah. She is not a titan of destruction like Scar is. But then she gets, comes to, and we see her just absolutely freeze the shit out of Scar. And you see Kong, then you see Scar kind of like with his eye moving, a little bit of facial twitch, like what the fuck? And then Kong pick his ass up and smashes him on a table like WWE. I swear, I wouldn't surprise you if they had wrestlers choreograph this fight. Like, they're doing the mocap for the monsters, and it's like, just put a table there. But they Kong smashes the shit out of Scar, literally smashing him into hundreds of pieces because he was frozen solid. And that's it. The fight ends, and Shimo again is not evil, so Godzilla and Shimo understand each other. Kong is then, of course, like, okay, cool, we got this. And that's pretty much it for the most part. Gia does not stay with Iwi. She goes back. She does stay with Dr. Andrews, and Mothra did her job in Hollow Earth. She didn't come up and help with the fight, but she was staying down in Hollow Earth to protect the Iwi and rebuild their bioluminescent flesh wall, whatever that was, with her, whatever it is, silk or whatever. But she rebuilds that. And then, of course, we see Kong come back into Hollow Earth, go back to where the apes are, and walks in with Shimo, but then jumps down and shows that Shimo is not there to hurt them, even scratches Shimo on the chin, and she's like, yes, thank you. All of the pet stuff, just what she wants. She just wanted a scratch. That's all she wants. She wants scritches. And then, of course, god damn it. That's how Kong and Shimo ended it. Godzilla goes back to fucking Rome, curls back up in a ball, and falls asleep in the Coliseum. Oh, yeah. Godzilla's got to be part cat. But that's how the movie ends. There was no post-credit scene, so don't worry. But again, I give this 9 out of 10 Dougs. Godzilla was underutilized, but Godzilla knew what was going on, so it was like, we didn't need to spend half the movie on Godzilla. But again, from the very get-go, Godzilla knew what was going on, and Kong figured it out. And again, the human element in this movie was really, really well done, to the point where it's like, okay, this is still the kind of human action we need. And, there's still fans are clamoring, okay, let's do a monster movie without the humans. I'm kind of iffy on that, just because, yes, we'll need the humans for exposition, but the way they did the storytelling with Kong, we kind of didn't need it. But to understand the whole rivalry between Shimo, Godzilla, Scar, and all them, was that Godzilla was responsible for beating the shit out of Scar and basically sending him down there. Shimo was the Titan responsible for the Ice Age, for King Ghidorah, and so on. So there are a couple, like, I don't want to say plot holes, but a couple of questions, like, what skeleton is Kong walking over in Hollow Earth? There's speculation that it's basically the first or the biggest skull crawler, or maybe it's a larger species of Godzilla species, Titanus Gojira. So there's just a lot of it. A lot of Titans we would love to see come back. We're very much going towards a Seihei era with Godzilla, with the way the movies are going. Because with the original Godzilla movies, you had Seihei, you had Showa, and you had all these eras in terms of movies. So like they were all in their own little universe, like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. Or Heisei, sorry, not say Heisei. There we go, Showa and Heisei. But that's what we're looking at with this kind of universe. And so my hopes for another movie are get it greenlit. But Adam Wingard, the director, did say the fans control if this movie gets a sequel, and that is go see the movie, go to the theaters, go see it. And the fans have spoken. It opened up to $195 million weekend, domestic and international opening weekend. That's the largest opening of the year. It will probably be the largest of the year, and probably second to only Deadpool 3. Given the slate of movies we have coming out this year, there's no shortage of good movies, but the impact is going to be Godzilla, Kong, and Deadpool 3 for this year. Dune Part 2 is that rare movie that combines the dramatic with action, with emotion, and all that. That really is the type of movie that should win Oscars, not Killers of the Flower Moon. Because while Scorsese and them are great directors, DiCaprio and De Niro are great actors, that movie doesn't has, of course, the drama into it, but it's not a movie I would go to theaters to see. And not a movie where I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, let's give it an award. Dune Part 2 is that type of movie that should win awards. Like, again, I'm comparing to Dark Knight, sorry. But these movies that should win Academy Awards because they combine the action, the drama, the great storytelling, emotion, fun. Like, that's what these movies should be. Or at least that's what the movies should be with what movies win Oscars. So Dune Part 2, in my opinion, should be one of those movies up for contention for best picture. I mean, if Oppenheimer could do it, Dune Part 2 can do it. But with Godzilla Kong, one of the wishes among fans, amongst myself, is that if they do another movie like this, either we should get a solo Kong, solo Godzilla film, or if they still do a team up like Godzilla, Kong, whatever, I'm okay with that also, because it's kind of like Marvel had to do it after the first Avengers movie. Everything's a mini Avengers movie at that point. You can't do a solo story. Yeah, Iron Man 3 did do it, but that was the last non-Avengers type film, because then you had Civil War, you had Thor Ragnarok, which still had Hulk and all them. And like, every movie still has some other Avenger in it except for Iron Man 3. Godzilla Kong is kind of going to be that, but we have confirmed through, like, analyzing frames and stuff like that, Gigan is in the MonsterVerse. We know Rodan is there. We're hoping for Anguirus should be in the universe. And if we're hoping for a new villain, Destroya is not the way to go just yet. We don't want to do Destroya just yet, but I would look at something like Biollante, or even maybe doing Space Godzilla, because Ghidorah is hinted to be an alien, and if I remember correctly, the smallest of his race or whatever. So if King Ghidorah from King of the Monsters is considered small, then Godzilla's got a problem. But we've seen Godzilla handle threats before, obviously from the Heisei Showa eras. So just call up Kong, call up Mothra, good to go. Call up Shimo. At this point, Shimo is an ally. So the next level threat has to be something where, like, they're gonna have to either pull all the resources or take a step back. But I would love to see actually Wingard close this trilogy out with Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla Kong New Empire. Give him his trilogy. Let him finish out with another Godzilla Kong movie, and have someone else do, a solo Godzilla film, solo Kong film. If you saw Monarch was really, really well done as far as the human element. Like, again, so I know fans say, like, oh, there's too many humans in the MonsterVerse. Monarch handled that really, really well. It is on Apple TV, and it takes place after Godzilla and after Skull Island. Well, how do I put this? After Godzilla 2014, and then actually a couple years, I believe, before Godzilla versus Kong. There's a time jump in there. It gets explained in the show. It's, I think, 9 or 10 episodes. It's on Apple TV Plus. Get your 7-day free trial. Go watch it, and you'll understand. So Monarch does a really good job doing that. If you have Netflix, another canon show that actually got overlooked is Kong. I forgot the name of it, but it's about Kong. I think this is called Skull Island. It's an anime on Netflix. It is canon for the MonsterVerse. So there's 2 shows, Skull Island, Monarch, and then the 5 movies. And this MonsterVerse is off to a really great start. So if Godzilla Kong really blows up and hits this $500 million mark, $600 million mark, then we will get the 3rd one. And I hope Adam Wingard finishes the trilogy like he wants to, gives us a story that we're not anticipating. Because Godzilla and New Empire, while yeah, we got Shima and all that, I'll be honest, there's some fans like, oh, we're going to get Space Godzilla. Oh, we're going to get Destroya. No, we got villains that have never been seen before, so we'll see what happens. But that's been my take. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I should have said at the beginning, if you like, follow, leave a like, follow, subscribe. Should have said at the beginning, say it at the end. You know the whole spiel. But we will try to get Justin on again. Bad weather in his area. He's going through it right now. He did text me, so he'll be fine. But it's just wreaking havoc on his electronics, his internet, all that. So But that's my take on Invincible, Dune Part 2, and Godzilla Kong New Empire. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you guys think. This will be kind of a norm now, recording our podcasts and just posting them up. This will be posted to my YouTube. If we get the way we want to go, Justin will be able to post these to Spotify, to Sirius. It's really easy and actually free to do this. So we'll get that going eventually. But for now, this will be on YouTube. If you stuck around to the end, appreciate it. If you're playing Pokemon Go in the Albuquerque area, we will be out for Background Community Day in Old Town. Hope to see everybody there. We'll be doing a fun contest for the people down there. And of course, when we do have Justin back, we'll be talking about Star Trek Discovery's final season, the new Star Wars shows coming out, Star Wars Acolyte, Tales of the New Empire, and also discuss. Oh, that's what I forgot. I need to watch Bad Batch. I am behind on Bad Batch. So we will talk about Bad Batch. So we got Star Trek and Star Wars to talk about. Hopefully the next time Justin is available, we'll do that. So I'm going to hop off of here and go watch Bad Batch. But in the meantime, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed these movies and the show Invincible. Invincible does have a season 3 coming. Dune 3, I'll just call it Dune Messiah, has been approved and greenlit by Legendary. That is coming. As far as a new Godzilla Kong project, that is up in the air. So we will have to wait and see. At least I'm gonna guess a couple of months before we get an official announcement, just to see if Godzilla Kong does turn extremely profitable like we hope. An almost $200 million opening weekend is a very good sign. We'll see how it does after this weekend. If we see if we just see a typical drop of like 50% in sales, like is what we're hoping, 40 to 50% drop, then we know the movie's gonna be profitable. We don't want to see a steep drop like other movies where it's like a 70% drop. So that's what we're hoping for. But until then, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Again, let me know in the comments, leave a like, follow, subscribe, and keep an eye out for the next video. For the meantime, I will probably stream a little bit of Background Community Day, so make sure to turn on notifications. But until the next time, guys, we'll see you all later.